Welcome into the Bite Meat podcast. And as you guys well know by now, we're really excited because every week we get some fantastic guests, pit masters of every level, some of the great names in the game, and some people that are in the industry, everything from, the CEO of the Big Green Egg to Jeremy Andrus at Traeger to all the people that do the spices at Badia, etc. This is a little bit of a different twist, and I've actually been very much looking forward to this because I get this comment all the time. It's Daniel Vaughn from Texas Monthly. I believe your title is barbecue editor, which pretty much says a lot right there. But I get this question all the time. First of all, welcome and thank you for joining us here on the Bite Meat podcast.
Yeah,
and I
hope everybody. Me on.
Yeah, man. So I get this question all the time. Boy, you must have the best job in the world because I cover sports for a living. I write about sports. I was the Chronicle for 17 years. And hey, you get in free? Yeah, I get in free. And then I broadcast about it and do talk shows about it and everything. And then, of course, I do this podcast, which is a passion of mine. And that's where it was born from. Brought to you every week by Texas Star Grill Shop, which, of course, we always like to thank. And real quick, before we get going, Daniel, I would like to remind everybody to subscribe to the podcast, wherever you get your podcast, iTunes, Spotify. We always recommend Podbean because that's where it's hosted and you can get every single episode ever done of all those people that we've talked about. But I get that point. I get that question a lot. Boy, you must have the best job in the world. I don't say no. I don't say I don't have the best job in the world.
Yeah.
But there's a lot to it that people just don't understand. And what fascinates me is I talked about the passion that I have for barbecue, kind of started this podcast. Well, I think you can relate to that. The passion you had for barbecue got you on the road to Texas Monthly. Let's go over that before we get into some of these great stories I want to share.
Yeah, sure. Well, as you said, I have a really great job.
And Don't say no.
And I would agree that you have a really great job as well. But you turned something that you were passionate about, that you loved, and you turned it into a job. And a job is a job, right? Mm-hmm. It takes work. It often takes some of the fun out of what you're doing. But yeah, I mean, I got into it because I loved barbecue. I loved eating barbecue. I loved exploring the state for barbecue. And I started writing about it in a blog of mine called Full Custom Gospel Barbecue. Mm-hmm. And I would think I was about like 200 reviews in. And I just remember seeing on some message board somewhere that a new place had opened in the Dallas area where I live. And someone had said, well, I'm waiting for Daniel Vaughn to go before I bother because I want to get his opinion. I was like, wow, like that's first off, don't do that. Like if it's nearby, I mean, come on, just spend a few bucks and find out for yourself if you like it. But it showed that people were actually reading this blog that I had, and then it had some, a small bit of influence. Mm-hmm. And so, fast forward a few hundred reviews later, and I got in touch with Anthony Bourdain, who agreed to publish my book, and it was really the first book in his publishing line. And all at the same time, I was working with Texas Monthly, not mm-hmm. for Texas Monthly. I was still working as an architect, mm-hmm. And working with them to create the 2013 top 50 barbecue list. Mm-hmm. So we do it every 4 years at Texas Monthly. So the 2013 list, I was working in 2012 to do searching for that. And mm-hmm. so I had a line to the editor, Jake Silverstein at the time, and just thought, it's time to shoot my shot, I guess, here.
Yeah.
I think, I told him that I think the readers of Texas Monthly might have more appetite for barbecue content than just once every 4 years. And why doesn't he have somebody writing about it full time? And that person should be me.
That's shooting your shot.
It didn't happen immediately or anything, but it ended up, that was in, I think, November of 2012. And in April 15th of 2013, I officially started my job as the barbecue editor for Texas Monthly.
Well, here's the $1 million question. What kind of barbecue pit master are you?
Oh, wow. So I have a lot of grills. I have a lot of cooking skill. I'm not the guy to call to smoke you a brisket.
Come on, man.
But yeah, you want a great rack of ribs, or some great smoked chicken, or a steak over real wood coals, not just charcoal, then I'm the guy to call. Um, I I guess I could get good at brisket if I wanted to, if I had that patience and I had more time on my hands. But really, the reason I don't is because it's just not something that I crave
Hmm.
outside the job. I eat so much great brisket as part of my job. The last thing I'm craving when I'm at home is brisket.
Yeah.
So,
Mhm.
yeah, that's just one of those things I don't usually bother with.
Yeah, I watch sports for a living, and sometimes I get home and I'm like, I want some brain candy. That's what I call it. And I'll just watch a sitcom or some reality show or something like that. I am interested though. You had this passion for barbecue. You started touring, so to speak. It's become an absolute monster. I was talking about you off air. A buddy of mine over at Space City Barbecue. You popped by, I think, not too long ago,
Yeah.
and he was sharing the story with me when I did a podcast with him, and he said, "Oh, I saw him walking toward my. I saw him walking toward like you got that reputation already. What is the reaction these days when you walk into a place?"
Well, it varies, as you might expect. There are places that maybe I haven't ever visited who, the owner had reached out to me and asked me to come visit. So they're really hoping that I do. And so they sometimes get excited, maybe a little nervous too. And then, it also depends on what season it is, right? Like right
Hmm.
now, we are in top 50 search season. And so some of the barbecue joint owners that I know well, who might be maybe a little more friendly and just
Hmm.
off the cuff. When I visit her, they know that it's serious business now,
Yeah. Yeah.
and that this platter really matters, and
Hmm.
so that there's a little bit different reaction, I guess. But I guess if I had any advice for barbecue joint owners who
Hmm.
are expecting me, and just let me come in and let me order my barbecue, and let me sit down and eat it. If you've got questions, just come up later. Um, I went to a place recently, and the gentleman back there was like, "Hey, you just have a seat. I'm going to fix you a platter." I was like, I've gotten pretty good at ordering barbecue over these years.
I would think so.
I think I can do it myself,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't want your full menu. I really just want a few specific items.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, just I don't call ahead. I don't plan these visits ahead of time. If there's a barbecue line that people stand in to get your barbecue, I'm going to be standing in that line too. So yeah, just do what you can to treat me like a regular customer, and that's going to leave the best impression with me.
Sure, sure, I get it. How much do you eat?
A
There's no
lot.
other way to put it. Like, can you ever put pen to paper?
Well, so I mean, I eat at a lot of places, right?
Mm,
I have a lot of barbecue trays in front of me. Like today, I ate at 5 different barbecue places. Well, I mean, I took photos and shared all the photos of those different trays. Of course, I didn't eat all of that food.
mhm,
Like,
mhm,
it's ridiculous. But
mhm,
I try some of all of it. Um, when I'm eating at one or two places, I certainly eat more than if I'm eating at 5 places, right? So,
mhm.
but I'm trying to hit as many spots before the end of this month, when the
Mhm.
search is really, we got to have a deadline, and
Yeah,
the end of this month is that deadline. So um, when we create that top 50 list, I know we can't be right. Like there's
yeah.
no such thing as a 100% right list, right?
Mhm,
I know that we can be as fair as we can possibly be, and that means visiting as many places as often as we can
mhm.
to get a really clear picture of individual barbecue joints and barbecue in a specific city, in a region, and across the state.
Yeah, I wanna get to that, in a bit, but, in terms of planning your stops and where you're going, how much of it actual planning? You're sitting down, you're looking, going down, "I've heard about this place," and how much of it is, like the story I related earlier, where you stop by a place on the way somewhere else?
Yeah, well, I mean, if you're talking about Space City Barbecue, I
Mhm,
mean, yeah, I just stopped by it, but it was on my list. It was on my itinerary.
mhm,
I usually put together an itinerary of, based on distances and opening times, how many places I think I can visit, reasonably,
Mm-hmm.
and try to keep to that. I will build in some time. Usually I over program, but there are some trips where I plan in some downtime if like that's a particular route that I haven't driven down in a while, and maybe something
Mm-hmm.
new popped up, so that I can stop in and give it a try. But as far as um, as far as happening upon a barbecue joint that I didn't know about beforehand, that happens less and less these days.
It does. So, how many, if you had to put a number on it, just guessing, or maybe it's more than a guess, how many barbecue restaurants have you eaten at over the last, what is it now, 12 years?
Well, and yeah, as the barbecue editor, I've kept track of all the places that I've gone.
Mm-hmm.
So individual barbecue joints, not individual visits, but individual barbecue joints. I've been to over 2,500 of them at this
Mm-hmm.
point,
Mm-hmm.
and most of those are in Texas, but there's some, across the country, and a few dotted across the world. Um, as far as how many places I visit in a year or whatever, I haven't really counted recently, but
Mm-hmm.
I do know in the top 50 search, so that will go from September 1st of last year to really March 1st, March 2nd of this year. Um, It'll be about 180 barbecue joints
Good
that I
Lord.
visited in that 6 month period. So,
Yeah.
that is that's certainly on the heavy side of what my
Mm-hmm.
normal duties are, but that'll give you an idea of what we do for the top 50 search.
And I've been writing and broadcasting for dang near 40 years, but I've very rarely have quote unquote reviewed places. It's usually covering sports or topics or whatever. That to me sounds like a lot of pressure. I mean, because you influence the line at the door. I mean, flat out. I mean that's what happens. How do you handle that when it comes to what you're in the midst of right now? You've got to create a top 50 list, and frankly, that top 50 list, you're going to create a lot of business for them.
Yeah, we have to look at it from both sides, right? If we put a place in the top 10, can they handle it? Right? Are
Hmm.
they equipped to handle that onslaught of business?
Hmm.
Um, if we leave a place out of our top 10 or our top 50, is it making the statement that we're trying to make about that place? Um, right now, we're trying to get it down to 50, and when I got all the score sheets in from our whole team that goes across the state, those came in really the first of the year,
Hmm.
and we had a solid 120 places that were in the running, right?
Hmm.
And so we got to bring that down to 50, and then we have 50 more honorable mentions. So even of those 120 contenders, we're
Hmm.
really just going to have 100 of them that are really recognized in the magazine.
Yeah. And you said team, and you've said we a couple of
Yeah.
times. How has it grown from the days of Daniel Vaughn bopping around the state, and where are you now in terms of how you go through the process of the top 50?
Well, the really small teams happened before my time. So in 1997, Pat Sharp, who just retired at the end of last year, she had been with the magazine for 50 years
Hmm.
when she retired. She was part of that 1997 team, and I think there were 5 people who went out for that.
Hmm.
Certainly, there were a lot fewer barbecue joints, but that's a lot of ground to cover for 5 people.
Hmm.
Uh, this last time in the 2021 list, I think we had 30 some people. We cut it down to about 25 this go round, and those are staff members for Texas Monthly, a few freelancers who we really trust their barbecue opinions, and we send them to a specific region to eat at 12 or 15 different barbecue joints, and
Hmm.
sort of rank them against each other, and then rank them with an overall score from 1 to 5,
Hmm.
and and come back to me with those scores.
And you ultimately just could tabulate, or do you have any influence because you've been to most of them?
Well, yeah, I've been to most of them, and many of them I've also been to recently. And so,
Hmm.
what I do in that 6 month period is go to ones that I haven't been to recently, so I can get a more up to date opinion on them.
Hmm.
And when that list comes back from all of our tasters, I'm looking at places that are surprisingly high scores, surprisingly low scores, and those that have a really high score that I think are real good potential for our top 10 list.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm going back to visit all of those. So I think a lot of pit masters out there, they think that I'm out there just looking for the top 10. So they
Mm-hmm.
get really excited that I'm showing up, but it's like, no, I might be making a decision of whether you're 40 or 60. Like,
Yeah.
so it's those places that are on the edge there of the 50, and the places that are on the edge there, the top 10 as well.
And I'm remiss here. When is it officially coming out? I want to promote that.
Yeah. Well, it'll come out in our June issue.
Mm-hmm.
And so people will start getting that in the mailbox in late May.
Mm-hmm.
And I think May 27th. I'm looking at my
That's the
calendar
deadline.
here real quick. May 27th, the day after Memorial Day, is the day that it will be released online.
Okay. Okay. Good deal. Now, this is something I wanted to dive into because, I picked up on it over the course of the last several years and doing this podcast. Texas is regional. I mean, there are regional styles of barbecue, whether you're in South Texas with mesquite and, maybe hickory and oak elsewhere, and styles of barbecue. How would you describe that in the regions of Texas? Because there are regions within regions, and then you have to kind of judge them against each other, even though they're different styles.
Yeah, well, I sort of regret to inform you that the regionality is really dwindling away.
No, I actually think that's a good thing, because I think we're starting to sort of morph into more artisanal type and different flavors that are crossing over.
It's good for overall quality, I think, but as
Mm-hmm.
far as interesting characteristics, it's not so good. You do lose that different regional flavor based on the wood that you talked about. Like
Mm-hmm.
now, even places up in the Panhandle, out in West Texas, where you used to find a lot of mesquite, they're trucking in oak, specifically post oak, or at
Mm-hmm.
least they're being told what they're using as post oak. It's probably some sort of oak, but we have a lot of post oak here in Texas, and a lot of barbecue joints are a lot of really great barbecue joints started touting their post oak use
Mm-hmm.
here in Central Texas, where it's really prevalent, and so it became popular statewide. And I did a lot of traveling around the country last year and the year before, looking for Texas style barbecue in the U.S., and a lot of post oak really everywhere. And
Mm-hmm.
so I really like going out to like California and eating at a place that's using like coastal red oak from the
Mm-hmm.
region, and really trying to get that sort of local flavor onto it. And eating at a place like Predite Barbecue there in Southern California or Central California, who uses like pinquito beans, the
Mm-hmm.
small pinto beans that you find in that region, and have those different regional touches.
Mm-hmm.
In Texas. When you get out west and you get up in the Panhandle, you do find a whole lot more green chilies. You don't find so many like jalapeno cheese grits.
Mm-hmm.
You find green chili mac and cheese and green chili sausages, and so I really like that. And then down in South Texas, you get that variation, certainly with the barbacoa, and
Yeah.
Vera's down in Brownsville is a really well known place for that wood cooked barbacoa. But also getting fajitas and getting half chickens cooked over direct heat, and things like that. So I love seeing that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I know I do too. But like I said, there is some overlay. There's some overlap. Would you say that you mentioned sides and the green chilies and all that? I've been very it's been eye opening. The artisanal word is thrown a lot. Craft is thrown a lot. How would you describe that for Texas in the last few years?
You mean for the sides or for the barbecue overall?
Well, for the barbecue itself, and then I'm going to get to the sides. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of people call it craft barbecue because they're not really sure what else to call it. Um, I don't really love the term craft barbecue, because then if it's differentiating from old school barbecue, and I think it makes a suggestion that old school barbecue is not a craft anymore,
Mm-hmm.
which is I think untrue.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think I call it big city barbecue just because that's really where it started. You really saw that pop up all over Austin, and then Houston, and later Dallas and Fort Worth
Mm-hmm.
and San Antonio. So a lot of it is geared towards a big city audience because you have a whole lot of people with a lot of money who can
Mm-hmm.
afford that style of barbecue and those artisanal ingredients like you're talking about, all that prime brisket and that huge variety of sides and desserts and things like that. So that's generally what I call it, but certainly it's gone well beyond the boundaries of big cities these days. Like that is the predominant style of barbecue that you really find
Yeah.
of any new barbecue joint that opens anywhere in the state.
How do sides come into play when you're looking at a barbecue joint? Because there are several places that I mean, to me that's a game changer. To me, it's part of the experience. Or is that yes or no for you?
I mean, sides are definitely part of the experience, and sides are something that we look at and that we score when we're out looking for the top 50. Uh, I will say a great sides are not going to get you into that list, right?
Hmm.
But if there's a tiebreaker to be had, all things from the smoked meats being equal, then sides is certainly one of the things that we look to break those ties.
Hmm.
Also, just number of service hours, right?
Oh yeah.
Are you a place that is just open on like Friday and Saturday afternoons, or are you a place that's open 5 or 6 days a week?
Hmm.
And so those are some of those tiebreakers. Again, those things alone aren't going to get you in.
Yeah.
You can't be open 7 days a week and have your barbecue be 20%. Have another place have its barbecue 15% better. Like you're
Yeah.
not going to overtake them, but as far
Hmm.
as a tiebreaker, that's certainly a possibility.
The other thing, and I personally like it, maybe you do, maybe you don't, but a lot of international flavors have, we talk about the world, the regions in Texas, the regions in the world have sort of filtered in to Texas. I like some of these things, the international flavors, new spices, new techniques, etc. Is that something that you guys have and you particularly have seen, and do you like that?
Absolutely, I like that,
Hmm.
and absolutely, I've seen it. In the bottom line for all these businesses is they are running a business, right?
Hmm.
And they need to differentiate themselves. And if they've got that background, if they have those that pantry and that palette that they can draw from,
Hmm.
those different ingredients and different recipes, then using smoked meat as the foundation, then more power to you.
Yeah.
So that's my view on the whole thing. But
A lot of
yeah, I mean,
Korean barbecue, a lot of different, where it's mid east
Korean
or.
flavors, Vietnamese flavors,
Mhm.
Indian flavors, Sabre barbecue in Fort Worth doing Pakistani barbecue,
Yeah.
bringing in the Pakistani flavor on their sides and on the meats as well. I just recently, yesterday, I ate at Smoke and Ash Barbecue, probably the world's only Ethiopian Texas smokehouse, uh, and eating, smoked brisket wrapped in injera, homemade injera,
Hmm.
sort of spongy bread that they really use. That it is foundational to Ethiopian cuisine.
Mhm.
And so trying all those different international flavors, I think anything that is heavy on the herbs, like Thai or Vietnamese, and I think goes better with smoked meats than like a heavy, sweet tomato-based barbecue sauce.
Yeah.
So I'm certainly open-minded when it comes to all that stuff.
All right. So here's the other thing. I always tell people this. I cook to my taste. And
Mhm.
I think a lot of people do that. We've had several guests on here talking about that. I cook the brisket the way I like it. Ribs, chicken, go down the list. You have different tastes than me, just by default. I mean, you just
Mhm.
do. Do you try to sort of? You have a sounding board. You have the other. I think you said 25 people that taste
Yeah.
barbecue. That's got to be one of the things that you have to wrestle with, right?
Yeah, it is. And when I'm eating a platter of barbecue, the one thing I always try to keep in mind is whether it's the way I would prefer it or not. Are they reaching the goal that they're trying to get to, right?
Hmm.
Now, you can't convince me that your goal was, bone dry chicken.
Yeah.
but but if your goal was to have bite through skin that is really well seasoned and not crispy,
Hmm.
then that's the goal you're going for. I would
That's
rather
right.
I would rather have crispy skin, but I understand why you might be looking for something different.
Yeah.
When it comes to pork ribs, like it's really it's really nice to sit down to a rack of pork ribs. Sorry, I don't usually sit down to a rack, to a couple of pork ribs that are really simply seasoned, right? With smoke and with salt and pepper and maybe some garlic, but are really on the savory side. And then in Texas, and I think throughout the country now, the sweet glaze or a sweet barbecue sauce added to the end, whether it's in the foil or right before they're served, is really the de facto way that so many pork ribs are served these days. And so I have to recognize that's what they're going for with a sweet rib, even though I prefer a more savory rib. So, yeah, it's like, again, trying to look at what their goal was. So,
Yeah.
if they're able to get a sweet glaze on that rib that still allows that bark to shine through versus, just glopping on a bunch of sauce at the end and kind of ruining everything about the bark, then that's what I mean. That's what I'm talking about when I mean like their goal for it all.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm guessing, presentation is a factor for you. We're about to have the Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo, which is one of the biggest rodeo cook-offs in the world. They have to look a perfect way. They treat it differently than they would at a restaurant. How much of that plays in for you? Like what it actually looks like? I mean, you're not a competition judge, but you're a judge, so to speak,
Yeah, but the old adage that we eat with our eyes first, right?
Yeah.
I think from a competition barbecue standpoint, I think it's really helpful for direct comparison,
Mhm.
right? You're able to look at that box and understand how it compares immediately with the one you just saw before,
Yeah.
right? And does that look more appetizing or not? So the way that barbecue, the way that slicers and the people who are building your trays use that tray as sort of a palette these days,
Mhm.
um, has made, first of all, it's made the overhead tray shot for Instagram like the easiest photo to make look good because
Yeah.
of the skill that some of these people have putting this stuff together. And so I would say that if you want to try and compete with that, then offer your barbecue on a tray, because
Mhm.
I can say that I'm not taking that into account, but like, how could you possibly not?
You have to. Yeah, you have to.
It looks spectacular in front of you,
Mhm.
right? Now, certainly, I've taken a bite of something that was more disappointing because of how good it looked uh, versus
Yeah.
how bad it tasted. So there's that dynamic going on too. But yeah, it's tough for a place that does takeout only
Mhm.
to
To be
compete.
pretty.
Certainly to
Yeah.
compete on a visual level.
Yeah. Yeah, that's crazy. All right, story time here. We got you on this podcast, and I know you probably have some stories. I'm going to be more specific, so you're not just randomly guessing here. What's the place that maybe you just randomly happened upon, and you don't have to necessarily name names, but if you want to, feel free. And you're like, "Holy smokes, why haven't I heard about this place?"
Well, I can't say that I just happened upon it because these days it's really hard to, not hear about a place but I do have a giant map of barbecue
Mhm.
joints that I
Mhm.
keep, places that I've gone to and places that I need to go to. And I recently wrote about a place called Weaver's Barbecue in Dayton, Texas,
Mhm.
which is northeast of Houston. It's oddly between Dayton and Cleveland, but
Okay.
not in Ohio. And so it's
I'm very
actually
familiar with that place, by the way.
so it's
Yeah.
actually in a little tiny town called Kennefic, and it's it's not a bright shiny new barbecue trailer. It's
Mhm.
sitting in a gravel lot that hasn't seen a load of gravel in a while, next to a gas station off the side of the road in Kennefic, Texas. And
Mhm.
uh, I didn't really know what to expect, and everything was takeout only, so it all came in boxes. Everything was prepared back in the trailer, so I couldn't really see what was going on. And
Mhm.
when Jesse Weaver I had gone to sit in my car because it was cold, and he just brought the order out to me because I was the only customer. I
Mhm.
mean, it was like 2 o'clock, 2:30 in the afternoon. So,
Yeah.
um, and so you started opening up each one of those boxes, and like I said, I go in hopeful, but
Mhm.
you drive up to a place like that and you're like, well,
Maybe not.
it's too high here.
Yeah.
And it was all so good. Oh man,
Oh,
like
really?
open that box and it was just like those ribs, that brisket looks so good, so juicy, glistening. You can see that they pickled all their own, the pickles and the pickled onions. made all their own barbecue sauces. The sausage just had this beautiful, mahogany color to the casing, and was just so juicy, like dripping into the box. It was, yeah. And so every bite, I was just like, wow, this place is good. Like this, this is so much better than I had hoped for, and
Yeah.
so much more than I'd really sort of given them credit for, just based on the look of the place. So
Yeah.
that would be one that really does stick out,
Okay.
from a recent trip.
Now let's go to the other side of the spectrum, because it happens, and again, you don't have to name any places, but you go to a place, maybe you've been looking forward to it, and you go, maybe not, maybe not.
Yeah,
How
well,
often does that happen?
I how often does it happen? Um, these days, like, if a place is highly recommended,
Hmm.
it's the hit rate for good barbecue is so much better than I've ever had it
Hmm.
in the what is it, 12 years I've been doing this now.
Yeah.
But yeah, I went to Black Gold recently in Austin, which is it's a place that's open for lunch and dinner, and had a big PR push and marketing department behind it before it opened, and uh, they've got some expensive barbecue on the menu. They're so proud of it. They require you to order like a half pound of their brisket and a half pound of their ribs, and
Hmm.
by the time I got 3 meats and 2 sides, it was like $74 with tip. So their barbecue came with higher expectations than most, because of really just how much they had touted how great
Hmm.
it was going to be when you came in to visit. And
Hmm.
maybe it was a little unfair because it was the Monday after the Super Bowl, but which is, I guess, National Hangover Day really for the
Yeah.
country. But if you're going to tout that stuff, cook fresh barbecue every day.
Hmm.
Don't be serving leftovers.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah.
And I think that's really the expectation of
Hmm.
barbecue joints. Of barbecue joint eaters in Texas,
Right.
of customers, that if you're gonna tout yourself that much, then you better be on every day.
Yeah.
Now, I really do look forward to getting back to Black Gold and
Hmm.
trying more of their menu, and trying it on maybe different times of the day or different days of
Hmm.
the week, before I ever wrote anything specifically about them. But those first impressions are hard to shake off.
Now, here's another one, because people ask me this too. Like, the hardest trip you ever had, whether it's traveling internationally. In my case, sometimes I was going to the Olympics and had to ride 20 hours on a plane and then a bus and all that. What's the trip that stands out? Like maybe it was a West Texas thing, maybe it's a South Texas thing, where you're like, boy, this
Oh,
better
the
be good.
West
Like,
Texas trips are never bad. I love driving out in West Texas. I really do.
you can go 100 miles an hour.
I love driving up in the Panhandle as well.
Hmm.
I really love just getting lost on those
But
super
maybe a
straight
trip that stands
highways.
out where it was,
So,
yeah.
well, first off, like, uh, so the hardest, I guess, the longest journey of any barbecue joint from my house
Hmm.
is DB's Rustic Iron Barbecue in Terlingua.
Oh, wow.
You go out to El Paso, I can fly to El Paso, right?
Yeah.
I can fly pretty much anywhere in Texas, but to get to Terlingua, you've got to fly to Midland, the Midland Odessa airport, and then you got to drive like I think it's like 3.5, 4 hours south to get to Terlingua, and so that's the furthest away from my house. But that's not there's really not a problem with that one, because you're down in Big Bend country and it's lovely. Um, I think the hardest trip for me personally had nothing to do with barbecue, but when my family and I went to Peru right as the pandemic hit and got
Hmm.
shoved out of the airport by the military,
Ouch.
that was a unique situation. Um, but some of these things are just little frustrations. But like, I went out to East Texas recently, and I went to several different places, and it was just like disappointment after disappointment. Like, one place,
Oh, no.
I was really hoping they would hit it all on all cylinders that day, and it was yeah, it was an okay tray, not as good as I'd had there before. The next spot, I guess I hadn't really kept up with their menu, but they had gotten rid of most of the barbecue stuff, so they really just had like sliced turkey and chopped brisket. It's about
Yeah.
the only things available. The next spot I went to, was 12:30 in the afternoon, like, still in the lunch hour,
Right.
and they had sold out of everything but brisket. And
no.
it's like, it's
You got to do better.
it's lunch.
You got to do better.
We're still in the lunch hour here, like, and and then the next stop, I was really hoping to give that place, to keep that place in the running for the top 50, and the brisket wasn't so great. The last stop was a good one, but it was just, it's more frustrating when I don't get the barbecue that I think I've really got the potential. Like, I don't get. I know that I don't get the best that they can do.
Yeah, yeah. All right. Before we let you go, a couple things more here. Describe your perfect barbecue plate. Let's say you're going out to an actual dinner. You're going to eat, a plate of barbecue. What would that barbecue be? Brisket, ribs, chicken, all of the above, sausage. Like what would be your perfect
direct heat?
It's got to be over direct heat. You're a
pork
hot and
steak
fast
over
guy?
direct heat.
Yeah.
Direct heat in Texas isn't so much super hot and fast. I mean, we're still talking about the high 200s, low 300s for most of them. But I just had one at Teddy's Barbecue out in Westlaco down in South Texas, and at Teddy's they've got a Chud box. If you're familiar with Chud, his YouTube channel, he builds these direct heat cookers. And so they do their chicken on it, they do pork steaks, and they do their crispy pork belly. They finish it over the direct heat to get the skin nice and crisp. So direct heat is one of those things that, cooking those wood down to coals and cooking directly over those coals, it provides this unique aroma that as soon as you smell it, they're cooking over direct heat. And with that aroma comes the flavor, which itself is also unique. And but it takes a lot of wood to do that, right? It takes a lot of fuel to cook that way. And so it's really gone out of style in Texas. So whenever I do find it, it does feel like a treat, to be able to eat that style of barbecue. And so, that's certainly something that I crave. And, in the case of Teddy's, I ordered barbecue there. This was last week. I ordered barbecue there. I got some brisket, some ribs, some stuff that was done on the offset smoker, and I went around back to eat outside so I could get a good photo by the picnic tables, which also happened to be right out by the direct heat cooker.
That doesn't hurt.
Yeah, well, I could smell those chickens on there, and I could smell the pork steak, and I was like, I gotta have some. Like, I gotta go back. I gotta go back inside and order some more food.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
That is absolutely awesome. All right. So before we let any of our guests go, and a reminder, it's coming out in June, May 27th, I believe you said, online, the top 50. We do like to have all our guests sort of talk about some of the things, whether charities or other events that they're passionate about and want to promote. And it's something I like to do. Do you have any of those that you really want to let people know that you're involved in or they should be involved in?
Yeah, well, Feeding Texas is an organization that Texas Monthly is paired up with, and every event that we do, a portion of the proceeds of that event goes to Feeding Texas, and so that's certainly they have an important mission, and we're happy to partner with them.
You're doing God's work, man. Do you come home every day and have a salad?
So my favorite burger joint, it has become my favorite salad joint. Like, my kids love to go there and get the burgers, so I'm always happy to go with them. And they've got they've got a great salad.
How do you not weigh 700 pounds?
Well, you see, as the years go by, that question everything is ramped up, right? It started with, well, how do you not weigh 300 pounds? And now people are like, well, I weigh 400. Yeah,
okay, yeah, well, maybe I shouldn't have asked.
Maybe that sounds safe. I don't know.
I don't know. Hey, it's good work if you can get it. It absolutely is. Hey, man, very much appreciated it. Looking forward to the list. And I have your email, so I'll send you an email if you ever need another 26th taster down in the Houston area or South Texas where I go a lot. But, man, I really appreciate it. I know you've been in the midst of a lot of work, so we appreciate your time, man.
Yeah, well, thanks for talking to me here at the Holiday Inn Express in Austin.
All right.
um,
Austin,
yeah.
where could he be going?
And
We'll
if
figure.
you happen by any places that you love or that you haven't seen me cover, please let me know.
Oh, I
I'm
will. I
always
will.
open to the tips.
Absolutely. That is Daniel Vaughn. The smoking hot tip of the week is coming up next. All right, we're done.